All right, welcome to episode 385 of the Artcasters. I'm Joshua Kemble, and we're going to make the rounds and kind of have everybody introduce themselves, tell us where to find them, and then we'll introduce our guest, which is a returning guest that I'm really excited about. All right, so let's start with Corey. Corey, where can everybody find you?
You can find me at coreykerr.com, and I haven't done a lot of visible art stuff lately because I just got back from a 21.5 mile 4-day canoe trip, which was kind of fun. And I'm doing like physical things, like I finished up this mural for a client, and embarrassingly have played a ridiculous amount of Tears of the Kingdom, making really inefficient murder machines. It's very addictive. So, yeah. So you can find my older stuff that I did a while ago at coreykerr.com. That's where you can find me.
Nice. I don't understand any embarrassing video games except Risk because I'm obsessed with it. But anyhow, if you guys haven't yet, you're on my channel, so make sure you subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications when we're about to go live, especially on Artcasters, because it was originally going to be Sunday, then it's Thursday, and then suddenly it's rebooked to Friday. You never know. And the best way to kind of find out is to make sure you're subscribed to the mailing list. That's in the show notes as well. It bounces from like Corey's channel and my channel. It's a good way to keep track of it. And then also just make sure you pick up my books, Two Stories in Jacob's Apartment, both indie comics. And with all that being said, now we're going to introduce our guest, Richard Fairgray, who's a returning guest. He's been a kids book writer, artist, a very prolific graphic novelist, cartoonist, whatever you want to go by. He's done a bunch of books, and he has a Kickstarter right now for a new book that I'm really excited about called The Ex-Wives of Frankenstein, and we'll show a little bit of that as we go. But anyhow, Richard, where can everybody find your work and check out what you do?
Now, I will answer that question. I promise you I will. But I have to ask you something first. Which came first, Jacob's Apartment or Two Stories?
Oddly enough, Jacob's Apartment came first.
Okay, that's cool. Because what I like is there are going to be people out there who are like, yeah, I read Jacob's Apartment. Hey, there's a sequel where he has a bigger apartment. And they're going to be like kind of confused by it. They're like, when are we going to get back to the architectural issues where Jacob lives? Sorry, I should start on a better note than that. I'm Richard Fairgray. I'm the only Richard Fairgray in the world, so I'm very fucking easy to find. I've had a rough 48 hours, so the art that I am doing tonight is drinking vodka.
Nice.
It is, I want to pretend like I'm drinking Tito's vodka, but I instead was like, there's a big plastic bottle of Trader Joe's brand vodka of the gods, so I'm going to drink that instead, because I feel like garbage and I should be garbage. But I do have ice, so it's basically a cocktail.
Nice. Yeah. Sorry. I think my son wanted to have a moment to tell people to subscribe. Ben, go ahead. Have your moment. You see? It's
Hey,
your
guys.
moment.
Hey, Ben.
Go ahead.
Hey guys, if you like the video, make sure to subscribe. It's totally free, and you can unsubscribe at any time.
I love it.
Plus, if you subscribe, make sure to ring the notification bell too, so that you get notifications for future videos.
Cool. Are you guys hearing that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Ben.
Plus, if you subscribe, it'll also help Josh out too.
Now, Ben, are you getting any kind of kickback from this, like a bump
Yeah.
in your
Anyways,
allowance?
back to what I was doing.
Ben, Richard was asking, are you getting any sort of residuals or money for this appearance?
I don't know.
You should.
Yeah. You should demand it.
Yeah.
You should demand free room and board for the next 10 years.
I owe you like a cut of whatever profit we make off of this video. High five.
Well, that's a scam. That's like
Yeah, exactly. Little does he know, we make nothing. Anyhow, he, for some reason, when I was putting him to bed, he was like, dude, I really want to come on your video and tell people to subscribe. I'm like, oh, okay. So anyhow,
yeah, we believe you 100%. That seems really.
I was like, you're gonna get up there, you're gonna perform. Okay, so let's get into the meat of the topic. I'm really kind of into this. The idea of working outside of the box, and I think this was a topic that I think would be really good for us to touch on because you've made kind of a career of kind of working outside of the box.
Yeah, I
And
mean it's oppositional defiance disorder, really, but I do my best.
yeah, so like how exactly like how why don't you let people know kind of like a little bit about how you started and then kind of the 180s you've taken since then at like in your art career. I think that
Sure.
might be a good starting point for working outside of the box, which I think can cover a lot of topics.
Yeah, I started publishing comics when I was a kid. Like, I was 7 when my first book came out, and it was because I was under the impression that there weren't comics anymore. I thought comics had gone away when animation got invented, because why would you need still images when you have cool shit that moved? And as I got older, I obviously learned that I was wrong. But I started, making like I by that point I was so deep into making these comics, and I started reading comics. And I think most people who make comics read comics first, and then they're like, I like this thing, I'm going to make it. I had seen comics sort of depicted on TV, but I didn't really have any frame of reference for what they were. And so I missed out on that bit that makes people say, I'm doing this so that I can draw Spider-Man one day. I'm doing this so that I can write fun Superman stories, whatever. Like, I've never had that part of my brain active. And so everything I've ever done has been, what if I can make comics? What if I can only ever work in characters that I've created? What if I never work on any kind of like licensed IP or whatever? And it's been a very hard thing to do, but I've made it work. I've been making a living in comics for a couple of decades now, working exclusively on my own characters. And then I kind of found this secondary career. I got mad one day because I got invited to a baby shower,
Mhm.
which is like, I don't know why. I don't seem like the sort of person who'd do well there, but I was like, okay, I'll buy a gift for this like child that's going to exist soon. And I went to buy them a copy of my favorite book when I was a kid, and the bookstore didn't have it. And all of the picture books were like wrapped in plastic like Laura Palmer and like came with a free toy. And I was very bothered by it because like my favorite thing as a kid was sitting on the floor of the bookstore and just looking through shit. So I went home. I didn't go to the baby shower. I went home and I made a kid's book. It took 4 days to write, draw, and color this book. Sent it off to get printed with absolutely no plan. Ordered 10,000 copies, and then by chance managed to find a distributor. I mean, like literally by chance. Like someone asked me to drop something off at a building, and while I was in there, I got talking to someone who turned out to be a distributor. And I was like, "Hey, do you want to distribute my picture book?" And they were like, "Sure," and it did well. So suddenly I got to start doing picture books, and 11 picture books later, I was making like my last picture book I did was 2017, and it was a feminist reimagining of Pierre and the Lion, where a little girl is so well behaved that a lion eats her. And we made a music video. It's like entirely watercolor animation, and for a 7.5 minute long song, which is not ever going to have been a success. But the publisher buried it because they turned out to be extremely conservative right-wing monsters. And so I dipped out of kids' books at that point, so I was a little burnt on it. And by then I was doing, in my kind of outside of that, I was doing a lot of ongoing series for all ages. So I was doing Blastosaurus, I was doing Black Sand Beach, and I can't remember if I'd signed on for Cardboardia or not at that point, but either way, that was coming down the pipe soon. And I was being, put in this nice little box to do books for 8 to 12-year-olds that were colorful and fun and a little bit scary. And I kept getting notes from editors saying, this is too scary. Make this less scary. Make this less gross. And then I keep getting responses from kids saying, this isn't scary enough. This isn't gross enough. Because, and like I was trying to write for, like, and I would say to kids at cons and at signings and at wherever, be like, hey, what if I'd done this? And they'd be like, yeah, that would have been awesome. I'm like, would that have scared you too much? Like, no, that would have been so fucking cool. And I was like, okay, so the thing that I wanted to do in the first place is what I should have done.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so funny. It's like that Sendak quote too, where he talked about the problem with a lot of editors and kids book writers is they forget what it was like to be a kid. And so like, they forget like when you're a kid, you're kind of a little monster. You're not like kids aren't these like perfect angels. And so like when we, yeah, like quite often I've found that too in publishing and with clients and stuff in general. It's like they'll kind of water down all the stuff that, made like Sendak great,
Mhm.
like in kids books. And it's like they forget that like the stuff they loved as kids, Yeah.
Well, like one of my favorite things I've ever seen. It was Halloween 2013, maybe 2014. I would always kind of go big for it because I was in New Zealand. Halloween wasn't a really big deal. So I would put a huge inflatable Grim Reaper on the roof of my house so you could see it from several blocks away. And you'd be like, okay, I guess there's a place I can go for candy. And I would have a huge table set up and I'd say, take as much as you want. And I'd have a whole range of like different candies because I knew not like a lot of the people in the area weren't going to be giving any candy out. So I wanted kids to still get some decent stuff. And these two kids, brother and sister, come down the driveway and they stop when they see the table and they realize that they have access to all of this candy. And they're just frozen there for like a half second before this little girl turns and just shoves her little brother over, like just pushes him to the ground and runs for the candy. And I'm like, that is the fucking absolute, like, most honest behavior I've ever seen. That girl was like, not only, like, I know that I have access to free candy, but it's going to be better if my brother gets less. And like, there's something so human and real. Like, if adults shove each other, it sucks.
Yeah.
If adults are horrible to each other, it sucks because they've learned. You know how you learn to be nice? It's when you do something mean as a kid and realize that you get a bad reaction from it.
Yeah.
And I find it so delightful that, like, if you give kids a stick, they will hit someone with it. If you give kids a cracker, they will bite it into the shape of a gun. I think that's awesome. Like, I think it's so delightful. It's so, and we don't want to talk about it. We want to make everything, like, we want to sand down those edges and make everything a little bit nicer. But I think it absolutely slaps that kids are like just monsters through and through. So I started getting kind of fed up with this, and I started pushing things further and further, and ignoring notes from editors and things. And the book started doing better and getting better reviews because, reviewers by and large are actually in touch with what kids like, and librarians and booksellers are in touch with what kids actually want, in a way that editors are just disconnected from. And then when COVID hit, I was under contract for, I think, 2 more Cardboardia books and 2 more Black Sand Beach books. And my experience with the publisher on both of those things was getting so unpleasant that I just wanted to, like, get the fuck away from it. And so I started making, like, right at the beginning of COVID, I'd been making this new book. It was a memoir about 18 months of my life where I got divorced, stole a boat, tried to disappear at sea, broke up with my boyfriend of like 4 years because he was an abusive monster, got jerked off by a supervillain at a train station, like moved to Hollywood, met a retired florist from Canada, and tried not to destroy him by being the monster that I think I am. And I had finished, I think, 3 chapters of it. I sent it off to my agent, and she said, if you ever show this to anyone, your career is over. You cannot publish this. And at the time, because of COVID and because of like loneliness and whatever, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna just like play it safe. So I kept making the book. I was like, I can now finish this entirely for me and not have to worry about anyone ever seeing it. And so I finished the book, and I was like, that is a perfect piece of work. I will never be happier with anything else I've ever done. I'll put it in a drawer and walk away. And then I started making all of these other books, and they got more and more adult. This is all spare time stuff. I started making Haunted Hill. I did this book Shed for Blue Fox Comics. I did a couple of other things that I kind of don't want to talk about because I'll either announce them one day or I never will. I'll put it this way: I made 10 graphic novels in 2020. I was a maniac. But there's like I started making all this stuff, and I was still doing the kids book stuff, and I was still making my money from the kids book stuff or the all ages comic stuff. Really.
Yeah.
And then there was a tipping point where book 1 of Cardboardia came out, and the publisher I'd been asking them for like a final proof of the PDF before they print it for months, and they'd never sent me one. They finally sent me one, and I went back to them. I said, well, the text is all missing from this page. And they said, well, it's too late. It's already printed. And I said, who removed the text and why? We need to find this out. And they said, we don't know. We can't figure it out. We'll never know. I was like, well, this fucking sucks. Now, we find, like, there are pages in comics where you can remove the dialogue, like, and there are pages in my comics where you can remove the dialogue and the story will still make sense. I absolutely cop to that. Like, a lot of my stuff is character more than story. But this page in particular was character more than story, but it was a character describing why his siblings are very bad detectives. And as he sits at the breakfast table eating cereal, the background changes to be images of him, of the cases he's describing, which include a bunch of pigs on a conveyor belt being turned into dogs. Like, you need some fucking dialogue hints for what is going on there.
Wow. So it just came out like a really abstract page for no reason. There's pigs on a conveyor belt.
What really sucks is that the entire second volume was going to be based around his siblings running a detective agency that they don't let him be a part of, even though he's clearly a naturally gifted detective. The whole story was going to hinge on that. And then I had to like rewrite massive chunks because of this.
Wow.
But then I got copied in by accident on an internal email, where they threw me under the bus and said that I must have sent through a file with no text on it. I checked all my files. There's no possible way that's happened. I downloaded the files from the original link I sent. The text is there. Someone has removed the text somewhere later to check something on the colors. I don't know, but whatever. And it was just that kind of like, oh, I'm the creator of this book. I'm the one doing all the work. And, to be clear, that it's a co-written book with Lucy Campagnolo. But I mean, what I'm saying is I'm the artist. I am the creator of the book, but I did the art. I did all the parts that are involved in what we're talking about. Yeah. I don't want to take away credit from Lucy. And they were blaming me because I was the one who wasn't in the office with them. And that felt really shitty. And this thing like tripped in my brain, and I was like, fuck them, I'm putting out whatever I want. Like, I do not care if my memoir fucks up the saleability of like this book that I now hate. And so it took a couple of years. I signed some deals with some other publishers and got some other more adult stuff like Shed with Blue Fox, and Four Color Heroes with Fanbase Press, which came out just last month. This is my 14 book year. I'm eating into my own publicity at every turn. And then I launched Haunted Hill online last year. And now I'm a returning guest. What was I on here talking about last time? Which book was I doing?
I think it was Haunted Hill, actually, at that point. Okay. I think you were posting pages of that as they were getting done. So yeah. No, I don't even know if it was...
Look, I may have been pretending that, but like I was doing 6 pages a week, but it was all stuff that I'd done in advance.
Wow. Okay.
I'm not insane.
You seemed like to me, you seemed like just this insanely prolific. Regardless, you are kind of insanely fast. And
I am insanely prolific. That is true. But the Haunted Hill stuff I did in 2021, and then I put all of it out in 2022.
Nice. So you had it like kind of preloaded.
Yeah. So there's, I'd had this idea where I wanted to have 26, because it takes about 8 days to do an issue of Haunted Hill. Mm-hmm. And so what I wanted was to have 26 issues finished. And then while I was going to release an issue per week, this was planned for next year, by the way. And then I put it all out last year and said, fuck it. But I was going to do an issue a week. And by the time the first 26 weeks were up, I would have had enough to keep going, like to get 52 issues in a year. because I wanted to prove that I could do 52 full issues of comic in a year, written, drawn, colored, and lettered, and available online. But I realized it would be the same problem I had last time I did 52 books in a year. Would be that I would only have time to draw them. I would never have time to publicize them, and no one would ever know they existed. The Richard and Theo's Funny Books, where my friend Theo and I put out an 8-page mini comic every week on top of our regular output of 22 books that year, where we never told anyone we were doing it. It just exists online. Complete waste of time.
That's crazy, but it's kind of fascinating because it's like it does seem like regardless of kind of money or anything like that, you'll be kind of obsessively making these books, hell or high water. And what I love is the books that you're making more currently are definitely like not all ages. Like a lot of these, like Haunted Hill, now I'm blanking out. Is it Octopus? Am I crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, Octopus, which is the autobiographical book that you were talking about. And I love that stuff. I love reading that stuff. I love seeing that stuff be made. I also know there's probably less of a market for that kind of thing than the kids stuff. But it's like, it's cool to see you doing that and kind of putting these things out and taking like kind of big risks on a kind of storytelling front as well. And I feel like that is kind of like a little bit, I guess, outside of the box to kind of stick with like the theme.
I like, yes, it's certainly going to be a more niche audience, but I think that like in indie publishing, I don't know if we should be chasing big audiences. I think we should be chasing specific audiences. I've been thinking about this a lot. Like the X-Files of Frankenstein is up on Kickstarter right now, and it is. I genuinely think it's one of the best things I've ever made. It's not the first time. It's the second time I've ever used characters from another IP in anything I've ever done. I wish I could say it was the first, but earlier this year I got asked to do a piece for Travis Gibbs' Cthulhu Invades Neverland anthology, and so I did an 8-page story where I hate Lovecraft, not just because of like the racism and other things. It's that I think he's a bad writer. But I did a piece where it's Toodles, my favorite Lost Boy, living so. I don't know if you've ever discussed this book, so I'll just the basic premise is Cthulhu is invading like the Lovecraft monsters, the old gods are invading other public domain things. So there's been Oz, there's been Wonderland, and now there's Neverland to complete the trilogy. And so it's a war against these things, and all the stories fit in somewhere within that war. And I said I'd do it. I said I wouldn't do it, and then I had this idea. Toodles is always he's always missing adventures because his marble rolls away and he follows it. So what if Toodles had survived the battle against these creatures because he'd followed his marble away and just kept following it further and further, and now he's living so deep in the like distant parts of Neverland, in the crashed remains of the Cinderella 2 from the anime Peter Pan series, and he has scarecrows of all the other Lost Boys and Peter and Wendy that he sets up each day to play marbles with, and talks for them like a crazy person. And sometimes when he looks at himself in the marbles, his reflection makes him look like an old man, because even though it's impossible to get old in Neverland, war will age us all. And he is lonely and it's quiet, and sometimes he has to realize and reckon with the fact that the marble didn't roll away, that he kept pushing it because he was a coward. And I was like, I want to make that story. Like, I really want to make this. So I did it, and I have like I'm so it got so weird and so dark, and I like the idea of even someone who gets to remain a child forever eventually gets old by being, but so that was my first time ever writing someone else's character professionally, and then I'd had this idea for Ex-Wife of Frankenstein. It's Elizabeth Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein. The Bride of the Monster. I know people are going to get into the whole like Frankenstein's the man, not the monster. It's like, one, everyone always says he's the doctor, not the monster. He didn't finish medical school. He was busy digging up corpses. Two, the monster is a reflection of him. They are, in fact, both Frankenstein. That is kind of the point of the title.
Yeah.
But it's about the Bride of Frankenstein and Elizabeth Frankenstein 3 years after Victor and the monster went on a rampage through the city and then disappeared into the Arctic together and are presumed dead. I'm playing fast and loose with the mythology, but like taking pieces from the films and the book and other places, and then recontextualizing it all to be in the modern day. And it's the two women on the day that Victor and the monster are found to be alive and have been living as a gay couple in the Arctic Circle for the past 3 years, and are returning to the city as heroes of the MRA movement and online queer communities and Reddit.
I love it, and it's from the ex-wives' perspectives of this. That's great. By the way, also there is that whole meme that went viral a couple years back where it's the unedited ending of Frankenstein, where somebody just added at the end, as his boat like sails away into the ocean, he turns around and says, "It's okay if you want to call me Frankenstein," and that was the end of the book. So, but yeah, I think that's actually like, I don't know, that's such a wild plot, like in a great way. And yet it's also like, it's interesting because it's this fantastical thing, and yet it's also brought into like almost like a slice of life narrative.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really fascinating to me.
One person described it as, it's a French film described as genre fiction, and someone else described it as they described it as like a Nancy Meyers movie with monsters.
I love that.
And I think like both of those are huge compliments. I think that a lot of these kind of like let's reimagine some public domain stuff go into a space of like, what if we made it more bombastic and more extreme? What's the biggest thing a Frankenstein can fight? What's the weirdest crossover we can do? And I just really wanted to say, like, what's something that I see in the text that I think is good or bad? What's something I want to extrapolate more? I'd had an argument in college with a professor that I said that Frankenstein was a gay narrative. I did a book report when I was 6, and I was meant to do the book report on Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, and I instead did it on Dracula. And I got in a lot of trouble because my book report was me standing in front of the class saying that Dracula was a very gay book about men finding different ways to penetrate each other. And that is not what 6-year-olds are meant to talk about, so I was punished. I maintain that I'm right about this. And also Dracula is a fucking fantastic book.
Yeah, I would argue Dracula's possibly better written than Frankenstein, but just book-wise, but not the current Frankenstein, your iteration of Frankenstein. But yeah, I love.
Well, I mean, if we compare my iteration of Frankenstein with the popular hit film Voyage of the Demeter, I would say that I win. That film will be forgotten before you finish even watching it.
Truth.
No, I think, like, look, Dracula's a beautiful book. I think Frankenstein has so much in it that's fantastic, and I think it kind of gets short shrift because it is almost entirely from the point of view of Victor Frankenstein.
Yeah.
And for some reason, people always remember him as the hero of the story, and he's a whiny little, like, just, God, he sucks. Victor Frankenstein is just like low key, my book is, I've just sort of played with the idea of like, well, he's just Elon Musk, right? Like he's
okay.
He's not really an inventor. He's not really a scientist. He's an insecure little crybaby, and he's just like thrashing about doing whatever he can. And like in the Frankenstein novel, Victor Frankenstein is that, like, he he tells these stories about how he had these great big feelings and these great big ideas, and how he was so brilliant and his friend Henry could never compare to him. But really, like, he goes to med school, has some arguments with some people, thinks a bit about it, and is like, well, what if I made a new person who wouldn't argue with me? Spent some time digging up corpses, then was like, oh no, I feel so bad about all the corpses I dug up. I shouldn't bring them to life, but I will. He does. Then gets all butthurt that the monster is scary looking, and then doesn't tell anyone for several weeks and gets very ill because of it. The monster kills a kid, maybe, and then, like, because we only have his word for it, and then, like, I don't know, he makes another one? Like, this dude sucks. He's such a whiny, snivelly little baby at every turn. But he's held up as this, like, hero because, like, he's so clever. He managed to bring life to inanimate flesh. Like, cool, you use lightning, I guess.
I love it. The one of the things that I've seen from the Ex-Wives of Frankenstein 2 is it has horror elements to it for sure. But I noticed that, like, you do a lot of play, like, just from the pages that I've seen, with, like, stitches and, like, picking at stitches and, like, things that are, like, more psychologically, like, troubling a little bit, but, like, at the same time, like, it's like a different kind of horror, like a more kind of nuanced kind of horror.
It's body horror. It is. It's the horror of anxiety. It's the horror that you can experience. Like most of us don't have stitching all over our bodies, but, like, we know what it's like to incessantly pick at hairs or scabs or you know, like, flick a mole until it stings a little bit. Like, we want to find that thing on our body that we can be like, this pain is deep and personal to me.
Yeah,
this pain is only minor. I want this book to haunt people, like a good horror movie can, but I don't want it to scare people. Yeah. So it's conversational and weird, and it's about very difficult friendships. It's about two women who, by and large, shouldn't be able to be friends. But they're no one else is going to understand what they've been through. And so they have this desperate need to feel like connected to someone else through that. And so they'll do everything they can to stay in the same places as each other.
Yeah, so one quick question, and this I think has to do with Outside of the Box too, where, you know, you write from multiple character perspectives, but, like, this and Haunted Hill are both kind of written from the perspective of females as the main character. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of curious how you kind of approach that, like, as a writer, and what kind of makes you, like, again, like, kind of decide to kind of take, like, okay, there's this story, you have this fantastical, somewhat almost humorous but fun story about Frankenstein and his monster and kind of what happened to them, and yet your focus is going to be from the perspective of these ex-wives that are almost like ancillary, like, side characters. So I'm kind of curious, like, what makes you kind of choose, I'm going to tell the story from their viewpoint and kind of the impact that this has on them. Like, what kind of makes you go that route? And then are there considerations that you put in when you're writing from, like, a woman's perspective?
I think that I'll jump back to Haunted Hill to sort of start the answer, I guess. When I was creating Haunted Hill, I was really interested in the cross section of, like, the Venn diagram between misogyny and homophobia, where like so much of homophobia comes from misogyny. Gay behavior is considered effeminate, and being a woman is inherently bad under the guise of misogyny. So there's this beautiful point where all gay men and all women become a certain age or shape or look in LA and become invisible. Like, we're not rejected, we're just irrelevant. And, like, the entire ethos behind Haunted Hill was, like, Eva has this newfound superpower of invisibility where she can call everyone on their bullshit and it means that she never has to explore her own terribly problematic qualities. So she gets to be right while also being terrible. I think that one thing I like. I mean, I'm not gonna. I would love to sit here and say like, as a gay man, I am able to be insightful in ways. That's bullshit. No, it's just that my entire life I have had women as my friends more than anyone else. I was. This is gonna sound like a brag, and it's not. A friend of mine said to me recently that a friend of mine who's a trans woman said to me that what was nice about me is that I don't talk to her as if she's the only trans person I know.
Yeah.
And I was sort of surprised by that because my friend group just tends to be the people I'm going to find, the people I'm going to relate to well.
Yeah.
And I think that like I listen, I have a photographic memory. I can, any story anyone's ever told me, I can tell back to you. There are pieces from so many people's lives that are, changed for this, but like when people have come to me and said like, here's a thing and here's how someone reacted to it. Like I wanted to put that into a story. I want to say that I can write men, I can write women, I can write any gender, but I think the truth is that the things that I do well at are writing women and writing elderly gay men, and writing children. Those are like the three categories that I can really like tap into.
Yeah.
I cannot, unless it's autobiographical, I cannot write men my age. And I struggle with writing teenagers in a way that doesn't feel. Four Color Heroes was a very hard book for me to write. I think I did a pretty good job, honestly. Like, again, not to brag, but like it took many. It was the first book where I'd had to do several drafts to make the dialogue not feel like, what does the 38-year-old think kids say?
Yeah.
And the only way I was able to do that was by setting it in 2004.
That's actually not a bad trick. I might have to like put that up my sleeve in case I have to write teenagers, and just set it back in time. Four Color Heroes has like how long ago did that come out? Oh, it came out fairly recently, right?
Yeah, like 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. So it seems like so far it's a pretty good reception,
People are okay. I'm going to tell a little story because this is a brag.
Yeah, you should.
Okay. I'm at Comic-Con and I'm walking the floor, just doing my thing. I'm dealing with the fact that I've become physically addicted to Comic-Con in a way where like I was sleeping 90 minutes a night and was full of energy all day long because like the con floor is my drug. And so I'm kind of in my head about that. And then this woman sees me and she goes, You're Richard Fairgray. And I was like, indeed I am. And she starts like reaching her arms out like she's going to hug me, but it kind of keeps like shaking and stopping herself. I'm like, what's happening here? And she goes, I read your book. I recognize you from the picture in the back. And Four Color Heroes is like the only book where my photograph is in it. Everything else I always have a drawing.
Okay.
So like I knew which book she meant immediately. And she says, and then she just says, not to spoil anything, but she says, and when he gets in the car, and then she just crumples to the floor and starts crying, like bawling uncontrollably.
Oh.
And I kind of help her up and I hug her, and she says, I'm sorry. I was like, it's fine. Like I always assumed that I'd have like more of a like Kathy Bates crush me with a sledgehammer type of fan, but this is probably healthier. So thank you. I don't know, like Octopus made someone leave their husband, and Four Color Heroes has made several people cry, and I'm not gonna I'm definitely not going to out anybody with this story. I'm being careful with words here and just double checking things in my own brain. But like, there are two people who have like approached me over recent books of mine to say that it has given them the courage to like make some big decisions about their lives. And
That's great.
it feels it's terrifying, honestly.
Yeah.
But it feels good. It feels like,
Yeah,
you
like
know,
you're hoping they make good big decisions. You're like, I hope it wasn't a bad big decision.
no, these are good. These are like, you know, living your truth decisions.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
it's like, you know, Black Sand Beach was a book about trauma. It's a book about a kid who can't remember an entire summer of his life, and like it's framed as a supernatural thing or some
Yeah.
terrible thing has happened, whatever. But like at the core of it, it's about a kid who's repressed some memories because it was too hard to deal with.
Yeah.
But there's no. I know that there are a lot of kids who have really related pretty hard to that book, and not to make assumptions, but I can make some assumptions about why. What they saw in that book that I put in there because I would like more people to have a frame of reference.
Yeah.
And the kids who don't get that frame of reference are just going to think it's a cool, scary story. But those, like, I'm not, like, the response I'm getting, you know, like, I have books that are selling in far lower numbers now because they're to a niche audience, because they're through indie publishers or they're self-published. And the response I'm getting online and in person is so much bigger because it's an audience who can say these things out loud. And that feels like, it feels really worthwhile. And I think that there aren't a lot of comics that are doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I think quite often, like, to get to those like kind of deeper truths, it's I don't know, it's almost like the difference between like mainstream and indie music. It's like there's a specific level of depth you can get to with like a huge record, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're really playing to a niche, you can really start kind of speaking of truths that like really touch people.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool. Like that is like half the reason to make comics in the first place, you know. It's like or make books. That's I think what we're all trying to do is actually like hopefully like move somebody, you know. I remember at TCAF a couple years back, when I was boothing at the Graphic Mundi booth, it wasn't about my book, but one of the reasons I was really happy to go with them as a publisher was there were people like frequently throughout the entire convention just coming up to the publisher just teary-eyed from like books they had read, and they were just like, oh, this like moved me and killed me, and like, or you know, like had like one of them spoke about like a civil war that had happened in their country and like nobody had written about it, and they were the first to do a book about it. And just kind of watching that exchange you know, made me like really realize like the value of like books, you know, like especially indie books that are kind of doing speaking on topics that like people honestly like need to be spoken to about. And like that's cool that you're kind of giving voice to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the like, I think that there's always a pressure in any kind of indie space that we want to reach as wide an audience as possible.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of a mistake. Not to get like too esoteric or like too disconnected from anything here, but it's like
hey, you can get esoteric and disconnected. That's what Artcasters is all about. Corey can.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Well, I'm not jumping in because I'm just agreeing with the whole niche thing.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Corey, I feel like I'm talking too much, and you're saying nothing, and I feel like a monster.
You are not talking too much, and I'm not a monster. No, I think if you do the type of thing where you're trying to please everybody, there's only certain types of content that can do that, and it's content that doesn't say anything, it doesn't tap into anything, it doesn't reach anything. It's like no one's offended at, you know, like milquetoast surface level stuff. You know, no one is really reached by it. They're just like, That is a thing that I saw. It's kind of like a non-regional diction, you know?
Yeah.
Like people on the air that are trying to not have an accent, like you can't place them, so you
Yeah.
can't relate to them. So they're kind of this faceless haircut that reads off a teleprompter. And
See,
it's the people that like niche down super hard that you're like, I hate that guy, or I love that guy, or she's saying what I think, or I didn't think about that. But it's not the guys who just have nothing and are just like amenable to everybody. Those are just totally uninteresting.
yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, specifically with terminology for grandparents, right? Like
Yeah.
everyone has a thing they call their grandparents. Uh, when I was a kid, I called my grandmother was called Nana, and my grandfather was called Granddad. And I don't. I mean, even right now, there's no fucking world where I needed to say which one was which. But as a kid, I was not embarrassed, but like protective of those names. So
Mm.
I would call them that to their faces. But in school, I would say my grandma and my grandpa because
Mm.
those were terms that were universal, and it was I had to protect the real thing. And
Mm.
whenever someone would say like Meemaw or Pop Pop or whatever the fuck else variations you have on these things, um, I would feel like physically uncomfortable because I was like, you're showing me too much of your world. Like like I feel like you're standing naked in front of me right now, and it
Yeah.
feels
It was
it,
this. They were sharing the thing you're not supposed to say. You know. Yeah.
yeah. And I wish I could get past that. And like the grandparent naming convention is like kind of the one hang up I still really have, because at the same time um I will use colloquial slang from a region pretty wildly in my life, and I will use terminology like the other day. The other day, I heard someone say that they thought something honks. They said this film honks, and I was like,
Honks. That's
yeah, I was
that's
like,
kind of amazing.
and I was like,
I don't know if I've heard that.
and like look, I have this real I hate the way like the kind of puritanical leanings of young people on the internet these days, where like people say heckin' instead of fucking. Like, just say the word, just be a fucking grown up, and just
Yeah.
I'm also from a country where like cunt is a compliment as much as it is an insult, depending on the
Yeah.
tone you use it, right? So like my frame of reference is off. But when people say heck yes, I'm like, eat a bag of shit. Stop it. Just say fuck. You mean fuck. Grow up. But when someone said like they said I watched The Flash, that film honks. And I was like, absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you. I would like to start saying that. I like saying things honk. And I want to even say like in past tense. I want to say, man, that honked. That's
Yeah.
fucking fun. That
That
fucking
is a
honked.
great. I don't know if I've heard that before, but yeah, that is a great one. That makes me wanna use it as well.
I'm always terrified like when you hear some new piece of slang that
uh,
you're gonna find out they're like, ah yes, and the Proud Boys would always describe things as honking. Like
oh
fuck.
no,
Right.
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. You know, I felt like so. Here's the thing: I've finally reached that age where the amount of shits I give are few and far between. Like they're getting lower and lower as I age,
Mhm.
and I finally reached the age where I was just gonna rock some Hawaiian shirts. And then I was a little bummed out because I was like, okay, I was going to do that because Magnum PI in the 1980s was like the coolest thing ever. And instead,
Yeah.
there's a bunch of Proud Boys and douchebags that stole that. And so now I have to contend with that. But I'm still going to wear occasional Hawaiian shirts because fuck
Here's the thing.
them.
Do,
They
do you
can't own that shirt, okay?
do you know where the term Proud Boy comes from?
What does it come from?
It comes from a song being cut from Aladdin.
What, really?
There is a song in Aladdin that got cut that is about like being proud, like being a proud boy.
Oh my goodness.
And it's all like I haven't heard the song.
Is it really from Aladdin? That's so
Yeah.
funny.
And like What a weird fucking thing. Like I was
Yeah.
on my honeymoon in New York, and the leader of the Proud Boys was giving a talk like 2 blocks from where we were staying, and some gay guy got beaten and put in a
Oh
coma,
no.
like literally like 2 doors down from where my husband and I were staying. It's fucking terrifying. The
Yeah.
same the same week, we couldn't get off the subway in a huge part of the city because uh, uh, bombs were being sent to Hillary Clinton and George Soros's place. Like it was a fucking terrifying time.
Yeah.
And like I'm not trying to diminish how terrifying those things were and are and like all of that, but that it fucking comes from Aladdin. Like,
Well, but that's like okay. So, I have gotten grief because I've gotten political on my YouTube, and I've made it very clear I don't kind of give a shit about getting political because it just being a human being, you're political,
yeah.
and I'm a pretty brazen lefty. Okay, um, and but the thing.
That's why I have your sticker on my laptop.
Nice, nice. But yeah, like one of the things that always bugged me about like a lot of the kind of like they're not even neocons. It's hard to explain. But it is the fact that like there's movements that are based on cartoons, like, and yet they're like, we're Nazis, but we're like weird, creepy Nazis that like are obsessed with Saturday morning cartoons, and like it's just a weird twist on like an evil that I'm familiar with and I hate, but it's just like the fact, like, again, the fact that it could start from Aladdin is kind of hilarious to me.
I will say, like,
that is funny.
if like a shitty right wing movement ever kicks off and bases itself on Ninja Turtles, like that's what's going to radicalize me. I'm just going to be like, no, I'm done.
That's what I'm saying. You know what, Richard?
If you try and take
we
my best
need
friend,
to come up with a gimmick, kind of like the Comicsgate thing, because the guys make tons of money. So we need a gimmick that's like, kind of like it's got to be. Yeah, we got to come up with something and spread it like wildfire, and just make it, be. I don't know, who are people we wouldn't mind having people hate. I don't know. That's the hard part.
Let me pitch this.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
We base it on Crash Bandicoot.
I like that.
Okay, 1. He is canonically my best friend, according to an email I got from the Google Play Store.
Nice.
2,
good.
He wears jorts and Converse, 2 things that I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, Chuck's forever.
3, he does like to spin around and jump on stuff, which I'm not capable of, but I wish I was. Yeah. 4, his sister sucks, another thing I have in common with him. So, also, his one true love, Neocortex, has the exact same hairline as my husband.
Oh my goodness. I don't know. This is sounding like another property you need to get involved in writing for.
I have. You can see it right in the background here. There is the sexiest gargoyle, Hudson, riding a horse made of Santa Clauses, and behind that is a Crash Bandicoot energy drink.
There is a Crash Bandicoot energy drink.
I'll be right back.
We need to see this.
This is fantastic.
Gary said, "Sorry, I was late for this." Mr. Hodges was late. Richard, you gotta hold him to task.
Look at this.
That's unbelievable.
Is it peach flavored?
I don't know. It's Wumpa fruit flavored, obviously.
Are you nervous about actually trying it because it's such a cool container?
For 3 years. I'm never gonna drink this thing. It sits over here with like my fake bottle of poppers and my Richard Fairgray bobblehead.
I like it. By the way, for anybody who is interested in the XYs of Frankenstein, I think we got to mention that is up on Kickstarter right now. There's a link below. It's almost fully funded. I think that we can help get that fully funded. So
that would be great. Here's what I'll say. Like, I'm going to be really honest about this. This is a book that it's very, very good. Okay, it's weird and it's clever and it's good. It is sitting at what? Just under 75% funded.
Mhm.
We got plenty of time. I'm not nervous. But at the same time, like, I'm not trying to reach a broad audience. I don't think that this is a thing that's going to appeal to a huge, like, well, no, it will. I think that people who read it will like it mostly. But I think that, like, if I tried to show this off to 10 million people, it's not an easy sell.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people shit all over projects on Kickstarter for being like, "There's tits on the cover." I'm like, yeah, people like tits. So what? Like, everyone likes tits. They're fun. You like, but people want to have like a kind of moral high ground for it.
Yeah.
And then people say like there are genres that work and that don't work. I'm like, yeah, that's true. Like, I don't think that Ex-Wives of Frankenstein is a $30,000 property on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
I do think it's a $3,000 property, and that means that I can keep making that book.
Yep.
I
think
yeah.
we need to prove that, because like here's the thing that to me this is one of the more exciting projects you're working on. I want to see more of these kind of projects, and the only way we see more of these kind of projects is like with the meager funding that that you're asking for, which is not a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, people should be able to make that happen. It's such an appealing kind of oddball, quirky concept, but also with heart. And I mean, let's talk about that, because we were going to talk about working outside of the box and stuff.
Here, the book
This
exists,
cover.
by the way. Ooh.
Oh, let's show that. So this cover, how was that made, Richard? Because I think that's a story worth getting into.
So I'll keep me on full screen as I describe this. So, I originally drew this cover. It was very simple, just her face on the green. I wanted to kind of feel like the skin kind of forming as it came through some kind of liquid, kind of through a mold or something. In the story, in the opening 8 pages, there's some text from a self-help book about acknowledging that your flaws and highlighting them to make yourself feel okay with them rather than hiding from them. And so it says, like, if you have scars or blemishes that you're ashamed of, to outline them in lipstick. And so she is tracing every line of stitching on her body in lipstick. And then at the end, when you're finished, you're meant to write "I am beautiful" on the mirror. But of course, because she has so many scars, because she's made of pieces of corpses, the lipstick runs out before she can finish writing "I am beautiful." So it's sort of that thing of like someone who's weighed down by so many things, they can't even do the thing that's meant to make them feel good. And I really wanted to feel like showing those pieces. And I've been doing these hand-drawn covers. I've been doing these like photographed interior pages, like they're hand-drawn, hand-colored, and photographed. And I wanted the cover to feel different somehow. I had a variant cover that was being a very inky kind of style of drawing, and I had a painted cover. And so I thought, well, the different thing for me to do then would be to do a physical sculpture. And so the cover is it is an actual physical sculpture of the face.
Wow.
So awesome.
It is paper mache of the face on some very warped cardboard held together with masking tape. And all of the paper on this is I typed out the 20th chapter of Frankenstein, which is the chapter about making him a bride. Removed all the line spacing so the text would feel denser. Sometimes printed multiple times on the same piece of paper just to create some extra shadow. And then the original version, I've made 2 versions of this. The original version, it was done in I just did the paper mache and then painted it. But the green paint pooled in weird ways and made the text sort of invisible. So this version is the green is mixed in with the glue, and then all of the pieces of the page of the text are done on newsprint and then dyed by the glue itself. So you get far more of the text showing through. I then photographed this and then printed the photograph, used a light table to trace all of the line work on the cover over it. Where did I put this? Here's the book. So the line work on the cover is traced over it, over the photograph, and then the lipstick is traced over on a separate sheet. Those two things were then scanned and then printed on transparencies, which were then clipped onto tripods in front of this sculpture, and it was photographed through it. I'm not a great photographer, so there's a little bit of digital augmentation with the original scans just to make it sharper. But this is as close to a fully physical object as one piece as I could get. Obviously, it's been dismantled now because, I have an office where I have to have space to actually work. I'll just show this now with no context, but
I love it getting all Dave McKeon on us.
Here, this is the sculpture for issue 4.
Oh, I love it.
So this is the face being reconstructed, and this one was actually submerged in a green liquid for the photograph, and it looks creepy as shit, honestly. It fell down during the earthquake, so it's a little bit broken.
Yeah, I don't know if Corey's aware. We've been getting a couple earthquakes, not huge ones, just like I guess a couple ripples from a 5. Nothing huge for California.
Yeah. So everything, like the whole book is everything is hand drawn and hand colored, and then photographed instead of scanned. So it like comes through as being like, I want a sense of immediacy. I want these pages to feel like as close to the original as humanly possible. So this is my favorite page, is her doing the tracing of the line work.
Yeah.
It's what I've been kind of using everywhere. But
nice. Gary said he's already backed it on Kickstarter and looking forward to it. Yeah. So with the with that hand-drawn kind of style, like I think that it would be cool to kind of know like the different styles that you kind of work in, because you tend to work in multiple different mediums, and to me that's appealing because I work in all kinds of different medium too, and I'm kind of curious, like what kind of informs your choice of what you're going to use for whichever book you're working on.
A lot of it is how much I hate computers.
Yeah.
I really like it when a page looks finished in front of me on the table. I think that this sort of comes from like, I grew up at a time when scanners weren't very good.
Yeah.
So like, you could draw something beautiful and then you'd scan it at like, in theory, 1200 DPI, and would come through still looking like garbage. And I was looking, I tried to figure out where I got this information from, because like nowadays, if I do digital coloring, I scan and color. I hit Command U. I select cyan, then I select blue, and I like turn all of those colors up to their full brightness so that they're invisible. So you get the pencil line out of there. Hit Command L. Fuck around with the levels there to get the black, and the white, and I get all my detail kept, right? Like that's how you do it. But when I would learn coloring, it was in the days when that stuff wasn't really easy to do, and so instead you were meant to scan in black and white, get a bitmap image, convert to grayscale, convert to CMYK, and then go through and like set your layer to multiply and paint out everything in white of all of the bits of pencil that still showed through. And it was tedious and it sucked. And when you were finished, you kind of had this piece that like the black and white art looked like shit. Like it looked okay, but it didn't. It looked like a hollow, shitty version of what you'd drawn. And you were like, there's no way to get across what I've actually done here. And then coloring would sort of fix it. And I hated that in between moment where you had to lessen what you'd done to then make it better with Photoshop later.
Yeah, no, I can totally understand that. Yeah.
So I've always wanted like to find ways to make the page feel finished as it is. And so with Octopus and Haunted Hill and now Ex-Wives, and my new story Tracked about someone who forgets to shut down the Domino's Pizza Tracker app and sees that it's still following it through her body, which will be in Nightmare Theater 3 coming to Kickstarter in October. I
Wow,
did.
you are just on fire with books, man.
I have an animated short about that.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's called what is it? What did I call it? Oh, now I can't remember. But yeah, it's about people swallowing digestible trackers so that they can race their feces through the sewers and post
Oh
it
my
on
god,
social
that
media.
rules!
Yeah. So
Um,
the idea, I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Yeah, yeah. My whole thing is, it's someone feels bad about themselves, so they order Domino's, and they forget to shut down the Pizza Tracker app, and they realize it's still going, and then while they're shitting out the last of their pizza after what I describe as a ripe case of cheese farts at 3 a.m., they like it's the first time they've felt good about themselves since their breakup, and they wonder what combination of toppings will allow them to achieve this faster next time.
As somebody who has, when they're depressed, done the Domino's pizza order, I think that is pretty fascinating to me as just a topic, because that I think there's going to be a lot of people who, when they've had a rough week or whatever, they're like, I don't care, I'll just watch the stupid tracker, wait for that Domino's to show up. That's great.
But my point is, all of these things were done in this kind of like hand drawn style with like the markers for all the colors.
Yeah,
and it's purely that like when I was doing Octopus, I was it was early COVID. I was stuck in my house. I couldn't come to my office. I had no computers, and then I didn't want it to just be like, and I'll color this later, because I knew I never would. So I had to make it look finished. And then with Haunted Hill, it was like, what are all the pieces I hate doing? What if I can remove those? Because I was so busy. At the time, I was doing Lexan Beach, Blastosaurus, and Carbordia, so I had to average 2.5 pages a day of finished art every day. So I needed one thing that was just like a hobby. And so it was like, what if I removed everything I hated? So there's absolutely no scanning, no no parts that are unpleasant. And then it just became like the thing. It was like no one else was doing anything that looked like my comics.
Yeah.
And it makes me very happy when I have this like style. And now, doing these physical sculpture things, I'm feeling like so wrapped up in like how it feels to actually make something physical for the first time in 2 decades.
Yeah.
I'm suddenly doing like my new book is all a mixture of collage and watercolors. It's called The Lights That Guide You Home, and it's about the changing of the street lights in Los Angeles. It's not set in Los Angeles, but it's inspired by that. It's about a man who's very unhappy with the way that turning the beautiful amber street lights into these horrible white, like glowing orbs that make the shadows, like they make everything brighter, but by association make the shadows darker, and they make the shadows so dark that things start coming out of them. And the whole thing is done with like complex shading and weird ass tones, and then everything's with watercolor trace. So I'll grab some pages.
Yeah, have you posted pages of that? Because I feel like I saw something you were working on where you were getting really rendery with inks.
I
Is that the same thing?
A couple of little pictures from it.
Because it looked like very like meticulous. Yeah.
So it's stuff like this.
Oh wow, how cool.
So this is like this one white panel down here is like the street lights coming into play, and so like when the new lights get turned on, everything becomes either too bright or too dark, and so yeah, all the horror is going to be about like what happens when the natural light doesn't come back, like the places that are always in shadow, the weeds keep growing out of, and eventually they become entrances to the woods, and the people who are lost in the woods get guided home by the light, but they're so lost they're not even people anymore. I did some pages where I did the text by hand on the same page, and I think it looks too rough because all the white is painted on. So I've actually redone these as separate layers, and they'll be glued on over it on separate pages. But like, yeah, the art sort of looks.
Nice,
Like
and I
the-
love the use of like colored ink on there too. It's really
so
cool.
every piece actually takes like 3 to 4 pieces of paper to do, because like the final ends up as this, but I have to like do this and then the text over it on a separate piece. Everything's done with light tables and tracing, and then some of the like this one came through pretty well, but some of them, the darker blacks that I have to do, have to be done on a separate sheet so it doesn't wrinkle as much. Or I'll have pieces of paper that are just only the detailed parts of the shading or colorful parts of shading. So I'm doing everything with different colored pens. And, yeah, so it's taking a long fucking time.
Yeah, so I have a really weird question regarding that. Like, so why switch it up when you already like have a sure thing kind of set? Like, I have a suspicion I know what the answer is, but why would you do that?
I don't want to get bored.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, I'm in this weird spot right now where the next 4 months, like, I'm not going to be in the same place for more than 9 days until Christmas. And, like, if I'm going to work on something, I don't want to be doing, like, well, I'm in LA, I can do 15 pages this week, and then forget about it for a while. I want a project that I can work on really slowly and feel okay about the fact that it might be 2 weeks to make 1 page.
Yeah.
I know this book is going to be 4 48-page issues. And I know that it's going to be exactly what I want it to be. I will not rush it just to get it out in time. I know what I would like to have it out, but I'm okay with it taking longer. I'm okay with it making no money. I'm okay with it making lots of money. I will not let external forces push what I do with the art that I'm making.
I love that.
And I feel very good about that at the moment. There's, this is gonna make me sound like an asshole, but like, I have a TV show. Like, my show is in production now. My animated series is in production, based on one of my books. And for a long time, I've been thinking it was going to be a very terrible process. The publisher I was with was very bad about the book, and they have been very bad about the animated side of things. And I got leaked a script about 7 months ago that was absolute dog shit. And basically, I had a meeting with the studio 2 weeks ago where they were like, "Hey, we've been trying to get in touch with you for like 9 months. What's going on? The publisher keeps blocking us from talking to you directly. We really want your involvement. Also, that script you've read is dog shit. We fired that person. Here's a good new script. And we really want you to work with us on this thing to make it good." And so suddenly I've gone from like, this TV show is going to be terrible to, oh, I read a script that is actually better than the original comic. These people are good and working hard and making cool stuff. And I'm an associate producer on a show that'll be, on the air for 2 seasons. That's
nice.
That's a cool feeling.
Yeah.
And so maybe it's like, I think there's a world in which like a lot of people would be like, and so now I can relax. And my whole thing is, and so now I can take this time to like absolutely swing for the fences.
Yeah, and like make what you want to make, Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense. I guess to most people that might not make sense. I think to a lot of cartoonists that makes sense, because like, I mean, if you have, if you're in a good position with that and like stuff like that, why not? Why not make awesome stuff? We all love making. Hopefully, I would hope. Yeah.
Yeah, and like I just, what else do I do? Like, I was in, I told you off mic about my last 24 hours. The reason we're talking tonight is because my flight got canceled because the pilots were unfit to fly, apparently. And I got diverted to San Francisco.
That's so funny. What makes a pilot unfit to fly?
I mean, I can tell you what would make me unfit to fly, so I don't know. But like they diverted me to San Francisco, and I was like, I'm in this hotel room for 5 hours. I can either try and sleep. The bar is closed. I can't get a drink, and my checked luggage has all of my like pills that I would take to make myself sleep easily in it. So fuck it. I'm gonna stay up all night, and I'm gonna write some more on my weird new book, and I'm gonna draw some pictures of Danny DeVito, and then like get to LA at 9 a.m. feeling pretty fucking punchy. And it's good. I feel good about that. I feel excited that I did that. I don't think a lot of people would do that. Like I tell that as a story of a fun thing that happened to me, and I think a lot of people would tell that as a story of like, here's why something was bad. By the way, my next book is called "I'm Only Drawing Danny DeVito as the Penguin Until I Stop Wanting to Fuck Him." It's an exploratory review of Batman Returns, where I try and figure out why I want to fuck the Penguin.
I love it. That is so funny. I can't wait to see all of these books that are coming out. It's just kind of unbelievable, the amount of work you do. I am really excited about the Ex-Wives of Frankenstein. You guys should all check that out. Make sure you're backing it. Gary Hodges said that is worth getting to the bottom of, for sure. That is so funny.
I don't want to reveal it. Like the books are going to come out. It's going to be a long and deep exploration. But without revealing too much, there's been some very good luck during the production of the book where I have discovered that maybe the look that I'm into hasn't changed in 32 years, and maybe I'm just always obsessed with greasy haired men who look like they're like right on the verge of bursting, right on the verge of bursting.
It's maybe it's like the obsession, with like a I don't know. I can kind of understand in the sense of for some reason the animals that I like to own are always like really chubby. Like there's something about like we have a really fat goldfish that I'm obsessed with. I love him. He's like the funniest goldfish, but he's like gigantic, and I've been a pug owner for years, so it's like there's something about like pugs and like hippos and stuff like that I find really amazing. So I don't know, maybe there's a bit of that too with it. I don't know.
I like the book sort of started because I've been on my own for about 8 weeks. Normally when I'm in LA, I'm like very sociable and I do all kinds of fun shit and I live a life. I jump back and forth between here. For people who don't know, I jump back and forth between here and my place in Canada. And my husband lives in Canada, and we sort of spend about half our time together jumping back and forth and crossing over as much as we can. But for some reason, for 6 or 8 weeks or something, I had like not seen my husband and not really seen any friends, and was just being like I was trying to finish some work. And so I was just like in my office until 3 or 4 in the morning every day, and then back here by 7. And I was very happy. That's my favorite thing to do. But I was certainly lonely. And I was watching Batman Returns while I was drawing one night, and there's the scene where he's in his very soiled, awful pajamas, and he's eating a dead fish with both hands, and like, to use my friend Pat's terminology, I bricked up. And I don't like knowing that about myself. I don't know why it happened. And so I was like, well, I need to explore this. I've now watched Batman Returns 18 times since the incident. I have drawn 67 pictures of Danny DeVito as the Penguin. I have explored different parts of his face. I've played with different expressions to see if some things make me like him more or less. I have gone deep into like tracing his face over pictures of my other like absolute celebrity crushes, Kathy Bates, Dr. Fauci, and Al Lewis, and trying to figure out where the lineup happens. But like, here's the most troubling part. I am now at a point where while watching the movie, when he does awful things, when he says disgusting things to women, when he behaves terribly, when he threatens people, I have this urge in my heart to run up to those people afterwards and explain that they just don't understand him. And that is so fucking broken of me. Like every time I've ever apologized for a friend being shitty and then like realized later that no, they were just shitty, I'm now wanting to do it for the fucking Penguin.
I love it. I love it. But specifically Danny DeVito's Penguin.
Yes.
I love it.
And like I'm not gonna lie, like I think Danny DeVito is a very fuckable man. Like he is really my type in a lot of ways. But as the Penguin, he is designed to be disgusting.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he shouldn't appeal, and he does. I spent far too much money buying a Danny DeVito action figure on eBay that comes with the half-eaten fish.
I love it.
I don't know what it is about the fish that is the perfect
I don't know
cherry on the top
I don't
of
even
that.
like fish.
Maybe you do though. Maybe there's some sort of fish, fish thing there. There's something fishy going on for sure.
I will say this: the popular hit film Grampire, which no one's ever heard of, got a Blu-ray release during me making this book, and I've had some big realizations about my tastes by re-examining that. It was the first thing I ever had sexual fantasies about was me blowing Grampire while hidden under his cape.
I love it. I absolutely love that you're exploring that though, and like that actually sounds like a great graphic novel too. I like that you're picking again, like you picked really good topics to write pretty fascinating stories about. So I think people should check it out. If you guys obviously like I think Richard sold quite a bit of books, so a lot of you guys probably already picked up some of his books, but if you haven't, explore Richard Fairgray's work, and a good starting point would be this right here. Oh wait, I was going to show that. Right here. Is that there it is. All right, that's a good starting point. There's a bunch of options here. You can get the digital comic. You can get the deluxe digital comic. You can get an emergency sewing kit. I would recommend get the actual comic because we're about physical comics here, not that digital nonsense. And you can also get alternate covers. There's great packages if you haven't picked up a lot of Richard's work. There's the Richard Sucks collection that has like a bunch of his self-published indie stuff.
I did the math on that. It's like 300 pages of for $70 you get Octopus, which is 144, Haunted Hill is 128, Horror Shorts is 20, Too Hot for Octopus is 44. And then you get a 250. You get X-Files and Frankenstein 1, and then you get 250 pages of digital comics as well. And
I mean, that's a crazy deal for a bunch of graphic novels. You know, it's insane.
But there's add-ons as well of Four Color Heroes and Ghost and Haunted Hill and Octopus.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think you guys should check this out. And also, there's a really good snippet of just pages. So, real quick, I guess before we kind of call it, because we're at almost an hour and a half, I want to ask about your paneling, because I think like one of my favorite things about your work is your unique way of paneling and kind of playing with time and playing with what comics can do. I guess the way I describe it is like you're making comics that are doing the things that only comics can do.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know about that. Like, how do you approach paneling and what makes you kind of actually, let's go back to that shared screen. It was a good example. Like a panel like that, like what makes you do that? Well, like a page like that with the swirling panels going along with the swirling water.
I think that like comics are a unique medium because like it takes everyone the same amount of time to watch a film. When you read a novel, it takes you the same amount of time to read, pretty much close to the same amount of time to read every page. comics are the only medium where I can make you spend 3 minutes on a page or 12 seconds on a page. I can play with time as the creator of the book. If and weirdly and almost like illogically, if I want to have a scene feel really fast, I can put 28 panels on a page and a little bit of dialogue in each one, and you will read that as an incredibly fast-paced conversation. Whereas, but the thing is, it'll feel fast and it'll take you much longer to read than a single page with 3 panels and 5 long lines of dialogue in it. I really love the idea of playing with these moments and holding you there, holding you in the experience. So here you get these 5 extra panels of her picking at her stitching after the dialogue of the page is done. In the draining, the shower drain sequence, I get to show you a thing where I play around with like the order of the panels and the complicated nature of a swirl, because she is washing herself down the drain as she feels like worn out by the fact that she wasn't able to write "I am beautiful" on the mirror. I couldn't include the page where she actually writes in the mirror because it had some nipples in it, and Kickstarter won't allow that on their campaigns. So you just get the pages on either side of it with her tracing all the stitching. But I wanted it to feel like look, I understand this is a thing that owes a lot to horror visuals, and let's play with the blood in the drain in Psycho, but let's also play with like the vulnerability of a woman in the shower.
Yeah.
And like also kind of like play with the fact that I'm going to make you feel a bit uncomfortable with it because it's not blood, but you're also seeing it drain as blood, and I'm going to show it to you draining from her thighs as if like it's sort of like this is some part of her womanhood that is being that she is wanting to wash away, her living self. She wants to wash away.
I love that. I love the fact that you brought up kind of time too, and kind of like that magic trick that I think is the addictive part of comics, is that ability to kind of play with and control time. But I love that you don't stick to like kind of traditional like kind of in the box paneling. That your paneling is always kind of wherever you can. You kind of find areas to kind of explode out of just the grid. And yet you still keep a consistent enough grid where it doesn't feel like chaos,
Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, is there anything we didn't get to? Obviously, we appreciate having you back on, and we'll probably reach out to you again and bug you in like 3 weeks when you put out your next graphic novel.
Yeah, please do.
But
I love talking about my books. This is great. I will be back on Kickstarter in October. So.
Awesome. Well, we'd love to have you back on, and I'm sure there's a million topics we could dig into. Richard, thank you for your time. If you guys haven't yet, you should support the Ex-Wives of Frankenstein, and also check out Richard's work. Check out the other stuff Richard Sucks put out, which is it's great stuff. It's really exciting stuff. I think it's doing, again, like I said, doing things only comics can do. Richard, is there anything else we didn't get to in regards to this book that you want to kind of close out with?
No, I think that's everything.
Awesome.
I'm so frazzled and I was going to mention that because Scott isn't here, he's dead to me forever.
Yeah, that's true.
That is important.
Yeah, Scott, you're dead to Richard. I just wanted to highlight that and underscore it. So
I mean, I was the one who made us move to a different day. But I refuse to take any blame for that. It's United Airlines' fault. They lost my luggage, so
yeah, that's a fun one.
Here's what's
that's always exciting. Right? Yeah,
like I don't want to sound like a crazy person here, but the only things in the bag are a Danny DeVito action figure and a very large dildo, and I need those for my art. So
I love it.
Feels unfair.
And what's funny is I feel like that explains so much, because when we were before we started, I feel like this is almost like full circle, because before we started you were telling us about your your flight being canceled, the contents of your bag, which I didn't blink at because I have strange friends. It wasn't. But I did have a moment of like, why those two things? Then when you described your book that you're working on, I was like, oh, there's the Danny DeVito, and we've closed it out, which I appreciate. That's great.
I want to say that, like, not to call myself a hero, but last night I realized that my Danny DeVito action figure was in my checked bag, but his top hat was in my carry-on, and I didn't. Well, that's fine. They can be separated because I won't put the top hat on him in case it's a sort of Frosty the Snowman situation, and I can't deal with that. But I took a picture of the top hat, and I almost posted to Twitter.com. Everybody has their own jar and pony, set realistic goals, and I didn't. I didn't post it.
Oh, I love it. I love it so much, and I can't wait to read that comic.
Which bag was the half-eaten fish in?
The half-eaten fish part of the action figure is actually in Canada. Still, I left that part behind along with his alternative hands.
Well, you still have the hands in the fish. A worst case scenario.
There's sort of I've got this weird setup where I have a Dr. Fauci action figure wearing like radiation gloves from a Homer Simpson action figure with the tongs that are holding it. I like doing mashups on my shelves. So there's a lot of pieces.
I love it.
Yeah.
I also there's too much. I feel like if we keep going, we will keep going for like another 2 hours. So I will let you go, Richard, because you've been awesome and very generous with your time. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Thanks to everybody in the chats. If you guys haven't yet, you should, and you like indie comics, I always say this, but it's true. If you want more books like The Ex-Wives of Frankenstein out there, you need to actually buy them. Like, that's, at the end of the day, like, really indie comics. This isn't a hard goal to hit. We can make this happen. So if you guys are watching this tonight or after the fact, please go support that on Kickstarter. Let Richard know that you like this kind of stuff so that he continues to make really awesome stuff, which I have a suspicion he will do anyway. But
I'm going to make weird shit either way. I'd like it if more people got to read it.
Yeah. But it also sounds really fascinating and cool. And how many stories do you have like that out there? I can't even think of one. So I think that would be great to see come to light. All right, we're going to close out. Richard, where can everybody find you? The link to your Kickstarter is in the show notes.
Yes.
Is there anywhere else
people
can check out?
Don't want to look
stuff?
there, kickrichard.com will also take you to whatever my current campaign is. RichardFairgray.com for about 2,500 pages of free comics.
Yes.
And I'm Richard Fairgray on Twitter for as long as that kicks around, and I'm the only Richard Fairgray in the world. I'm easy to find. If you see a Richard Fairgray, it's going to be me.
Be careful. There might be one out there who's just he's going to be impostering around. Okay, Corey, where can everybody find your stuff?
You can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com and go check out the that old animated short called Journey Poo about people posting the progress of their feces on social media. For
Journey Poo is a really good animated short. I recommend it. I feel like there is a crossover of the Venn diagram there.
Can I tell a really quick story before we go?
Tell more quick stories. I love them.
When I was in high school, some friends and I were talking, and someone made a joke about like keeping track of their shits, and they said like you could call it your log, and it was just like a dumb goof, right? Anyway, the next day, this like really like weird, unpopular kid who'd been hanging out near us had taken it very seriously and like read his log to us, and we're like, "Oh, Josh, you can't do that." It wasn't you; it was a different Josh.
It could have been me.
Was
Richard? It was a good log. Okay, I had a reason to write it.
Was he wearing a leather fedora? Is that
no?
Okay. I do actually tell one other story. I promise that'll be the last one.
No, I want more. Tell as many as you want.
So I was in an airport recently. This, by the way, goes right back to the beginning when Corey was showing like the video game footage and said something about like efficiency of killing machines. I was in an airport, and there's this kid on an iPad, And his father comes up behind him and just starts yelling at him. I told you, you cannot make that. You cannot do that. And the kid says, but Dad, it's just the most efficient one. I was like, what the fuck is happening here? I need to casually see what's on this kid's iPad screen. So I like to get up and like a little walk by. I look down. Kid is playing Minecraft and has built a machine to do mining or whatever. And it's just a big swastika.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, no. Little did he know.
His dad be like, you're in an airport, stop it. And he's like, it's just efficient.
The amazing thing about that is that's like the only thing that would make that acceptable of the dad to be like, you cannot do that. I love that. Oh, man. Well, you guys, even if it's efficient, please do not make swastikas on
It's really easy to. Anytime you could make a swastika, you could just go out for ice cream instead, and I promise you that's better.
Yeah, it's a million times better. All right, guys, there you have it. Don't make swastikas in Minecraft. Make ice cream. And Richard Fairgray, again, always a pleasure. Thanks to everybody in the chats. Thanks to everybody watching live. And we will see you guys on the next live stream or Artcasters. Make sure you've hit that like button if you've gotten this far and there's not likes. I don't know what to say. All right, guys, have a good night, and we will see you on the next one. And Richard, we'll have to have you back on the next Kickstarter that you're running. All right, bye.